Okay, so we're going to launch right into this today by taking you to school for just a minute. Okay, so I want to talk about the word meta. The word meta. Anybody have an idea of what just the word meta means? That's a rhetorical question. Don't answer. It comes in a place, it's a prefix. And it's a prefix that you can use in conversation to sound really smart, right? To sound really cool. It's at the beginning of a lot of different words. For example, it comes from words like metamorphosis. And this is when beyond the change of the cocoon is the change of the butterfly. And then we've got words like metabolism. And this is beyond the changing of your cells is the actual changing of your bodies. Is what takes place in metabolisms. There's words like metaphysics. That's actually the math and the science behind math and science. So I want to talk to you today on the topic of comparison kills compassion. Comparison kills compassion. The word meta, it's like when you buy the fancy bread at the store, right? You know, the stuff that you get twice as little of, but pay twice as much for. You know, that bread I'm talking about. And it comes in a wrapper, so you take off the wrapper, and inside of that wrapper, the bread is wrapped in another wrapper. This is only the expensive bread. I only bought it like once. But you take off the wrapper, and then it's inside, there's another wrapper, and that outside wrapper is kind of like the meta bread wrapper. You know, we're gonna really break this down. Or it's like when you buy a new iPhone, okay? And it comes in that sleek, beautiful, white box, right? And on the front of it is a picture of the actual size of the iPhone and the actual color of the iPhone. And it's just, it looks so nice, and it looks like you could almost touch it. Keyword being almost. So on the outside, that picture of that iPhone is actually a meta iPhone. Not the real thing. Looks a lot like it. In fact, looks just like it, but it's not quite the real thing. Or it's like when you're on your Instagram or you're on Snapchat, or I think they even have them on Facebook now. And you can use all of these different filters to filter yourself to where it looks a lot like you, but it like makes you just a little bit prettier than you actually are, right? You know, it makes your cheeks just a little more pink than they really are. It makes your eyelashes look just a little more thicker than they are. I'm mainly talking to the girls here. I really hope the dudes aren't using that filter when you're posting on Facebook. They need like a filter for the dudes, right? You know, one that just makes us look way bulkier than we really are. You know, girls get all this blush and stuff, but what do the dudes get? You know, we either look like a girl or we look like us. We don't have any other options, right? But that picture that you post after using that filter, that's like a meta you. You know, it's not the real you. It looks a lot like you, but it's not quite you. It's a meta you. You can think of meta as not quite the real thing. As in, there's something beyond what you're seeing when you look at that. With the bread wrapper, there's something beyond the actual outside bread wrapper. There's something beyond that picture that you posted that you used the filter on. I use math and science and all of these crazy examples to say this. And this part you really need to get. We sometimes live our lives as a metaphor for someone else's life. We sometimes live our lives as a metaphor for someone else's life. And here's my theory. We spend a lot of time thinking about us while looking at them. We spend a lot of time thinking about us while looking at THEM. Looking at them. For example, Michaela and I, we went and saw the new Lion King on Friday night. I'm like a huge Lion King fan. It's like my favorite Disney movie of all time. Don't tell. So we went and saw it, and after the movie, I'm sitting out in the lobby on a bench. Michaela went to use the restroom, And I'm sitting there and I'm holding my huge bucket of salted caramel gourmet popcorn and a large, like overly large Sprite. The Sprite was my wife's. And I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of people watching. I'm not on my phone or anything. And I look up and they've got the different posters on the walls, right, of the new movies that are coming out, And so I'm sitting there and directly in front of me is a poster of one of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's new movies coming out, right? He's got a new movie like every day, And so there's this picture of this new movie that's coming out, and he's sitting on a motorcycle with that totally bad smolder that he has, right? And his muscles are just bulging like it's three-dimensional, even though it's a 2D photo. And he's like 8 foot tall in this picture. And I'm sitting there looking at that and I'm like, I can respect that. That's a pretty man. I can respect that. Okay? And I'm thinking, why can't I look like that? And then I realized, I'm like, that dude puts in a lot of work. He doesn't just wake up looking like that. He puts in a lot of work. As you can see, I do not put in a lot of work. So I only have myself to blame, right? But I'm looking at this picture, and nonetheless, I'm still thinking, I wish I could be that tall. I wish when I sat on a motorcycle, my chest stuck out further than my midsection. But it's just not the way that it works currently in my current situation. And so I'm not sulking, I'm not getting down on myself or anything, but I am looking at him and I'm thinking, what would it be like to look like him? And I look down at my popcorn and my Sprite and this, and I'm like, But for a minute I sat there and I compared myself to Dwayne Johnson and the way that he looks and the differences between us and wished for a minute, right? We sometimes live our lives as a metaphor for someone else's life. Now remember my theory, we spend a lot of time thinking about us, thinking about changing us while looking at them. I'm sitting there thinking as I'm looking at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and I'm thinking, I could try hard. But I'm thinking about this because I'm looking at him. Not because I had this sudden urge to be healthier, like I wish I did, but it's because I was looking at him and this is beginning to change my thinking, beginning to change the way I was thinking there for a minute. And I began to use him as some kind of measuring tool, as some kind of yardstick, as some kind of tape measure to measure me up against of what I should be like, of what I should look like, of what I want to look like. And we can use people in an unhealthy way as a measuring tool. Now, there are healthy ways to use people as measuring tools. When you're using spiritual leadership in your life and you're using them as a measuring tool of where you would like to get you in your spiritual walk, that's great. But we can use people as measuring tools in unhealthy ways, and that's what I'm focusing on. We can have internal conversations with ourselves about them while thinking about us. And it can begin to cause some damage. Now, I know that this is not going to be a bobby pin flying, putting your eye out kind of sermon today. This is going to be a little more practical, but I believe that this is something that we all deal with, is comparing ourselves and losing compassion because of it. And so I believe if it's something that we deal with, we ought to look at it from a biblical perspective and see what the Bible says about this thing that so many of us deal with. And if you're sitting here this morning and you're looking at me and you're saying, Brother Ryan, I'm sorry, but this is a message for the young people. This message is exactly for you. Okay? So please tune in and pay attention here. But I believe that we all have some kind of comparison issue. I believe we all deal with this at some level. It may not always be at this real physical level, but there are other levels that we can have an issue with comparison. But I don't want to get it twisted. Comparison, it goes two ways. You see, you can be guilty of either coveting what someone else has, like when she's all like, oh, she's so pretty. I wish I had her hair. Me too. or the dudes are all like, man, why can't I look like Dwayne Johnson? There's that kind of deal. I wish I looked like Blake Lively. Or you can be guilty of putting yourself up on a pedestal because you are so-called better. You have so-called better things. So-and-so doesn't have this yet. I deserve to be on the planning committee because I am such and such. I'm so much better than them at this. Why didn't they ask me instead of them? They will never be able to afford the home that we live in, so on and so forth. Right? There can be two angles of comparison that are going on in our lives, and both are unhealthy for us as people, for us emotionally, for us spiritually. You see, the thing about comparison is that it usually happens in one of four categories. You get it? It's a metaphor. See what I did there? It's just well thought out. It can happen in four different categories. And so I'm going to break that down for us here real quick. And it goes with the acronym that we have up on the screen right now. When I said we're looking at us while thinking about them. THEM is what we're going to be talking about. And so the first one, the way that we can compare ourselves to other people and other stuff is by things. Is by the things that we're looking at. We compare our material objects against other people's stuff. Right? Sometimes we're putting ourselves on, we're patting ourselves on the back for having better things and belittling them in our minds. We've all grown up some. It's not like junior high where we like show up with the better thing and we're like, a lot of times as adults, these things are going on in our minds. We're thinking these things. Sometimes we find ourselves longing for something that someone else has. We're desiring something that we see someone else with. It's things, it's material objects. It's clothes, phones, homes, cars, so on and so forth. You go and you visit someone at their house and they live in this beautiful new home, right? And you go home to yours and it's not like theirs. Your home is great. There is absolutely nothing wrong with your home. You have made your home a home. It's beautiful. It's perfect for your family. It is a blessing from God. It's warm. It's clean. You take care of it. It's worth talking about. But it's not like theirs. And so you are comparing here when really you're doing great. You're just not doing them. Right? And so we can compare things. And this is a trap. This is a trap for you to lose your joy. This is a trap for you to lose your peace. This can push you into a lifestyle that can spiral out of control. Your desire to have this can turn you into a workaholic, a psychomaniac that just works all the time, has no relationship with their family, has no relationship with their kids. Now this innocent thing where you just wanted to do well for yourself and your family has now turned into neglect. And now your family is suffering all because you saw what they had. And you want to be like them. This really is reality. These things happen. The next thing we talk about when we're going through them is honor. Honor. We compare our status, our skills, or our talents against other people's. You ever do that? You ever look at something someone else is doing? Someone else maybe is doing really well, they're totally capable of, and that's an area where you struggle in life, whatever it may be. Whether it's something at work, whether it's something here at church, whether it's you wish you were singing or whatever it may be, and you see this and you covet their talent because of the respect that comes with it, because of the honor that comes with it. We want their social status. Or we pat ourselves on the back for our social status. We want people to talk to us the way that people talk to them. Or maybe we're comparing how many likes we get versus them on social media and different platforms like that. Status, skills, talents, following. You get the picture. We're talking about their community. It's a joy stealer. It's a peace thief. You're seeking the highlight reels of someone else's life. When you are looking at their social media, when you're looking at their Facebook, when you're looking at their Instagram, and you are coveting their life, right? A lot of times, it's going to be the day when you've had a bad day, when you haven't been on vacation in 3 years, right? And you need to be gone so bad, and you get on Facebook, and there's the Allens on vacation. Man! Right? No, really. I was looking through their pictures last night. It looked like so much fun. But I was a little jealous. I was like, man, I would like to be there right now. That looks like so much fun. But you get on there and there's somebody on vacation. Someone's always on vacation. Maybe that's the first time they went on vacation in 3 years. But you're completely irrational in the moment, and you're looking at it and you're like, that's all they do. All they do is go on vacation. They're always gone. They don't work. Rick just plays softball. And you only see the highlights of their life. You're not seeing the struggles. You're not seeing the things they're going through behind the scenes. You're not seeing how things are breaking down around the house. Point in case, me. Yesterday, right? I got some new parts for the Jeep. I love the Jeep. Like I have to pray about it because sometimes it gets a lot of him. And got some new parts for the Jeep. And so I'm putting them on and I'm so pumped. And so I snapped a couple pictures of it, threw it on my Instagram, not to brag, but just because that's what I like doing. I like working on my Jeep and I like fixing things up on it. And so I threw them on there. And I'm sure some people looked at that and they were like, well, he just spent all day just working on his Jeep because he probably headed back out to who knows where next weekend to go wheeling again with Jeff in his 1943 Jeep. That's all he does. And if you looked at my Facebook, pretty much all my pictures are Jeep pictures anymore, right? So if you looked at it, you would think that's all I do. But what you would have seen if I had a GoPro on all day yesterday was that was only about maybe 2 hours of my day. I spent the rest of the day looking at the backside of my father-in-law as he was working on the plumbing under my sink because it was completely clogged, and we were spinning a snake up and down my sink plumbing all evening trying to fix that. But you didn't see that because I didn't post that. Right? And what you didn't see after that happened was after he left, I went in to do some laundry. I was going to be real nice and help out. And I opened up the washing machine, which is a front loader, mind you, and 10 gallons of water come flooding into my laundry room. Because of the clogged sink, the washing machine had not been draining, and all of that stinky, nasty water had been coming back up in. And so not only was it 10 gallons of water, but it was 10 gallons of water that smelled like raw sewage all over the laundry room. You didn't see that, though. I didn't post that. Right? When you live life comparing yourself to other people's social media, it's going to be a joystick. You don't see the poop water. Right? You don't see Rod's rear end. Come on, somebody. So quit living life chasing after someone else's social media. Moving on. That got out of hand. Entourage. Letter E. When you're comparing yourself to someone else's entourage, we compare the people in our lives to the people in their lives. We compare our family to theirs. Hey, we all got dysfunctional families, okay? You can look at all the pictures that get posted 3 times a year at holidays, and it's easy to think, they're so perfect. When really, they all just got done ripping each other's faces off because your mother-in-law had to get one more picture. Right? It's so easy when you're looking at other people's things, when you're comparing, to allow that to steal your joy, to allow that to steal your peace. We covet their family, their friends, their circle of influence, their followers. Maybe we want their community. Or maybe you're bragging about your community. Maybe you are so satisfied with your community and you are intentionally wanting everyone to see that and make them covet what you have. Comparison goes both ways. M, the makeup. Talking about the makeup. This isn't just makeup like CoverGirl. This is any physical characteristic that you compare yourself to someone else. We want their physical appearance, their physical looks, their body, their hair, their voice, the way they look, the way they sound, etc. So on and so forth. Whatever it is that you find yourself comparing based on looks falls under makeup when you are comparing. THEM. Then we spend all of our time considering changing us while looking at things, honor, entourage, and makeup. But hear this. Comparison kills compassion. I'm just now getting to the meat. Comparison kills compassion. Think about it for a second. Compassion. It's a deep, sincere concern for others. A deep, sincere concern for others. When is the last time you felt that? And I'm not just talking about when you drove by someone standing on the street corner with a sign and you thought, oh, that's too bad. I mean real, deep concern for someone else other than yourself or other than a direct family member. When's the last time you experienced that? I was sitting in my truck the other day. It was one of those days where the entire world hated me that day. Okay, I had been chewed out by several people at work, customers, not Dad. And people had come in that I had absolutely nothing to do with, were upset with me, like to the point of near cussing. I had gone to the grocery store and been talked down to when I was trying to find something there, and I left there like, what's wrong with people? You know, I went to Walmart and got the snootiest, nastiest, most hateful person checking me out, and I'm just like, why? You know, I got honked at and got the finger at a light when they couldn't see from behind me there was a little old lady up in front of me who was taking her time going through the intersection, and I could see from my perspective she was just having a tough time getting through. I'm trying to be nice and wait. This guy, man, he's just letting me have it. I mean, it's not just a, hey, beep, beep, the light changed. It's like a, you know, I'm like, dude, come on. And so I got down at Walmart and I get in my truck and I go, no, I hate people. You know, you ever have one of those days? I'm just being transparent with you here today. I'm like, I hate people. I'm sorry, Lord. I know I'm supposed to, you know, be in ministry. You can't hate people and be in ministry, but I hate people. And you know, in that moment, I'm just like, I would never treat someone like that. I would never do that. I would never act like that. I would never talk like that to someone. And I'm sitting here and I'm comparing myself to all of these people that were so terrible to me that entire day. And you know what I decided in that moment? I was done for the day. I had enough. And I was like, for the rest of the day, you better get out of my way. I will run you down, putting on a mean face, meaner than normal. This face is going to tell you, come at me, bro. Come at me. You don't want to take me on today. And you know what? I lost all my compassion for that day. Lost all my compassion for that day. Didn't care what I saw. Didn't care what looked sad. Didn't care what the situation that somebody had going on. I was done. My comparison, it killed my compassion for the day. The Bible says in James 3:16, for where you have envy and self-ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Those are some serious accusations being thrown around there, Lord. Disorder, evil practice. Yes, comparison is that big of a deal. Why? Because comparison kills compassion, and we have to have compassion. If we're going to be Christians, if we're going to be people who follow Christ, if we're going to be godly people, if we're going to change this world, if we're going to make this world a better place, we have to have compassion. We cannot afford to lose it over something silly like comparison when we're so busy envying others and there's no room in our hearts to truly see them or to truly love them. There's no room to see how we can reach out to them, how we can love them, how we can stand up for them, how we can invite them in, how we can partner with them, how we can share life with them, how we can support them. Think about it. This is part of the reason why Christians can get such a bad rep. Because our reputation becomes that of judging and comparing rather than that of loving the hurting. Come on, let's be honest. We can get a reputation of being judging and comparing. And you know why? It's because we do that. Rather than loving the hurting. Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. And my original scripture says this: when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Now this is one of those very special moments, one of those very precious glimpses that we get of Jesus as the man. In comparison, ironically enough, to the disciples who are also men. If you read through this chapter in Matthew, you see Jesus performing miracle after miracle. He heals a paralyzed man. He raises a dead girl to life. He heals a sick woman. He restores sight and speech to the blind and the mute. Jesus is giving so much energy and attention to all of the people around him every day, all day, day in, day out. It paints a picture of the exhausting work of actually seeing people. You know, we can go through life. You know, it's like when you're driving down the road and all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 minutes has gone by and you're on the other side of Ramsey. And you're like, how did I get on the other side of Ramsey? You don't remember driving through Ramsey. You were completely zoned out for those 2-3 minutes. Anybody ever done that? It's just me. I took out a street sign just a couple Sundays ago doing that exact thing. Zoned out, headed home from church, got off the curb or got off the road a little bit into the gravel, pulled me off. I took out a sign. And it was that. I had just zoned out, just thinking. I didn't have my phone out. I promise, Mom. I wasn't doing anything. I'm just driving. And I zoned out. And we can do that in life. And it can be more than a street sign that you take out if you stay in that place too long. It could be a person. It could be someone's spiritual eternity that you take out when you are in that zoned out moment, just cruising through life. And so here we are with Jesus and the disciples. And Jesus is, they've been doing all this craziness. The disciples, they're tired. So Jesus is like, hey, let's go over here off the far. We're going to take a little break. We're just going to have some us time. We're going to rejuvenate. And then here comes the crowds. And the disciples are like, oh, no. You know, I've talked about this before in a sermon. They're just like, you got to be kidding me, man. And they're like looking at Jesus like, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? You just tell us when we need to run, and we'll run. And Jesus starts moving towards the crowd. And he's like, we have to have compassion on them because they are like sheep without a shepherd. And this is how Jesus addressed these people. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. It causes us to reflect on our own lives. When Jesus rightfully could have complained about being exhausted, he was flesh and bone, completely exhausted from his heaven on earth work that he had been doing for days on end, and instead his heart is drawn to people. Instead, his heart is drawn to the hurt, is drawn to the suffering, is drawn to the anguish, is drawn to the pain in their eyes. And Jesus moves toward them in his exhaustion. So my question to you is this: are you caught up comparing, or are you building community? Are you caught up comparing, or are you building community? Are you working on the metaphoric, false, surface level version of yourself, or are you living out your God-given person of loving God and loving people? Because that's what He's truly called us to do. When you see them, are you thinking only about their things, their honor, their entourage, their makeup? Or when you see them, are you thinking that humans' eternity matters? THEN. That humans' eternity matters. That where people are going to end up in eternity actually, truly does matter. The reality is there are way too many people distracted by comparison in life. In the comparison cycle. And way too few people loving other people. This is what's wrong with our world today. Our world. I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about our world. We are caught up in comparison. Way too few people choosing to be different by using their God-given personalities. And way too many people trying to be metaphors of someone else's life. And this breaks Jesus' heart. Because He made each of us unique. He gave each of us different talents. He gave each of us different abilities. He gave each of us different personalities. If we were all the same, that would be really weird and boring and annoying. You know, because like the person that's most like you gets on your nerves, right? But He made us all different for a reason. He intentionally made you the way. God doesn't make mistakes. So who you are cannot be a mistake. If God created you and you truly believe that. I made you great at speaking and leading because I wanted you to lead people to Christ. I made you great at math and physics because I wanted you to lead intellectuals. I made you great at anatomy because I wanted you one day to lead a team of doctors. He made us all certain ways for a certain reason and for a certain purpose. He didn't create you as a metaphor. He created you as a masterpiece. Amen. A masterpiece. Some of us are busy trying to fit into the mold. Some of us are busy trying to steal others' talents and others' gifts. Some of us are too busy trying to become like someone else. Some of us are too busy seeking popularity to really serve. God said the greatest among you would be the least among you, would serve. But we forget that so often. We can get this kind of greater than attitude when it comes to dealing with people. But God's saying, I designed you different than the world. So that you can see others around you. We see Jesus perform miracles. We see a tender, transparent moment where Jesus' response to the helpless is compassion. And then He turns to us and He drops the mic. As the musicians come. Turns to us and drops the mic. At Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When He saw the crowds, He had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And then in verse 38, then He said to His disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into His harvest. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Let me just bring it here in this building for a second. There's so many places within this building to serve. So many places in this building that you can get plugged in, that you can help reach the lost. This church alone is a harvest field. And we broadcast out. So many places that you could get involved and get plugged in. There's help needed in different areas and different places. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. That's part of what that's talking about. Get involved. Get plugged in. Start making a difference. Start making a change. This is not me coming down on everybody. I want to encourage you. Get involved. Get plugged in. Let's go and let's harvest. Let's go out into the field and let's bring in those lost. We have work to do. The harvest is plentiful. There are crowds and crowds of people who will say yes to Jesus. But are there sufficient workers? Are there sufficient harvesters to go out into the fields, into your schools, into your communities, into your workplaces, into this very church, into your families, and to gather in the harvest? The workers, the ones who are compassionate, are few. This world taints us. This world manipulates us. This world changes our focus. We just get caught up on the wrong things sometimes. I want to awaken you this morning and make you aware of what is going on. So that's our challenge and our prayer today. Can we stand all over this place? That's our challenge and our prayer today, that you would stop comparing and that you would start having compassion. Because it's true that comparison kills compassion. But I'd like to think that it's also true that compassion has the ability to kill comparison. Compassion can take out comparison. The monster you feed grows the fastest, gets the biggest, becomes the strongest. Feed compassion. Don't feed comparison. So the next time you get caught up in other people's things, in other people's honor, in other people's entourage, their makeup, when you get caught up in THEM, them, while you're thinking about you, instead think about him. Instead begin to focus on him. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. But imagine what could happen if we, the church, chose compassion. Our world is starving for some compassion. As I sat in my truck the next day after I had my shameful afternoon of wrath on everyone that came in contact with me, the next day I'm sitting in my truck and I'm thinking back on that day and I'm like, man, people are so awful. What is wrong with people? And I'm asking God, I'm saying all these cliches, we're headed to hell in a handbasket. You know? And I'm asking God, what are you going to do? I'm raising a kid in this. You know, my grandkids are going to live in this one day. Everybody I know's kids live in this. Lord, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do to change this? God, we can't keep living like this. You have to do something. And then I was taken to that song by Matthew West called Do Something. And in that song, he's asking all these exact questions to the Lord. He's saying, he's naming all of these awful things that are happening in the world. And he's saying, Lord, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You've got to do something. And then in the song, he comes to the realization and God says to him, I did do something. I created you. I created you. If we won't be the change, if we won't be the start, if we won't be the one that starts to show compassion to these people that are hurting. We just did a Q&A a couple months back with the young people. And one of the young people, we do it anonymously, so I don't even know who asked it. One of the young people asked, why are people so mean? Which legitimate question. Question I asked writing this. This person asked, why are people so mean? And I sat and I thought about that and I prayed about that. And I wanted to answer that question because I know that that can really alter a young person's outlook on life. And so, thought about that and I realized that we need to have compassion towards those people rather than hate. And I told that group of young people, I said, you don't know what's going on in their home life. You don't know how they are being raised. You don't know what abuse goes on at night. You don't know what's missing from their life. You don't know who's missing from their life. They don't have Jesus. You don't know who's hurt them. You don't know who's done what to them. You don't know what hand the world has dealt them. And so my advice to you is not to hate those people, but to have compassion for them. To have compassion for them and to show them something that they probably don't see otherwise. So I say that same thing to you today as adults. And I had to say that to myself that day sitting in my truck because we had already had that Q&A. And I was not living out the advice I had given to that young person. And I realized, I don't know what's going on in those people's lives. The compassion has to start with me. I think we have the potential to fill heaven and rob hell if we would do this. We have that ability to fill heaven and rob hell of so many souls because souls are really what it's about. Souls are really what it's about. Can we all gather up front here? I told you this wouldn't be a bobby pin popping service. It's not going to be a bobby pin popping altar call. But I just want to sing this old song. Link up with somebody next to you. This song just kind of says what everything was about today.